So thanks for coming up here, Alan, today and joining us. We really appreciate your time. And the reason why you got here is that Jim did a bit of a call out to franchisees, and we wanted to share some stories about people who may have unfortunately were made redundant, but then they found a Jim's franchise and they haven't looked back since. So you put your hand up for that. So maybe I just want to talk to you first about your story about what brought you to Jim's in the first place.
I'd worked for Telstra for just under 30 years, and they were always striving to reduce costs by reducing numbers, because labour is always your most expensive component. So they downsized the area I was in, got offered redundancy. I thought that's okay. At the time, NBN was setting up shop, and they were recruiting, and I'd been told I could get a job there. Unfortunately, the timing was bad. The government changed hands, and the Liberal government put a hold on NBN recruiting, and I was sitting at home for nearly 6 months, and I was just chewing through the package money that they'd given me, and I thought, well, hang on, that should be paying my house off. And then I was listening to SEN Radio, and Test and Tag Division had advertised on SEN Radio. So I thought, well, that sounds like a good idea. And I was talking to my son about it, and we originally went to come in together. In fact, we did the training together, but that's pretty much the reason. I thought, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm wasting my money I've got in the bank, sitting at home getting lazy, and I'd always wanted to run my own business. The part of Telstra I worked in, unlike some trades, didn't lend itself well to setting up your own business. I couldn't go and set up a telecommunications company in conflict with Telstra. So I thought, well, why not? You know, I've had an electronic background. It was in an electrical area. And I knew a fair bit about health and safety again from my time in Telstra.
And what were you looking at? Were you looking at anything else around the time, or what was the 6 months like? Was it just time to refresh yourself, or what were you using it for?
Did a lot of work around the house,
Yeah.
a bit like COVID renovations at the time. But no, I was sort of waiting until my contacts at NBN said, "Oh, look, we've recruited. We're recruiting again. Put your hand up for this job, and you should be able to get in." Because it was effectively the same work. And then around the time I decided Jim's would be a better option, it meant going back to the city. If I did go to NBN when they did start recruiting, it meant either catching the train or driving in and parking in the city. It's like anything up to an hour each way. And I started thinking about, well, if I'm working for myself, I can set my own hours. I can work in locations I want to work in. And it started becoming more and more attractive the more I thought about it.
And were you looking at anything else at that time, or was it just Jim's?
No, not really. I think it was just the timing of when I heard the advertisement on the radio. I hadn't really started looking around yet. So I thought, well, yeah, why not? And then sort of once I got into that process and went through the brief assessment they did, then got involved in the training, it just become more and more a natural fit.
And what's the training like? How do you remember that?
The training is very extensive. It's very extensive from the perspective of, if I go out to an equipment supplier who supplies the tester we use, they'll give you 2 hours of instruction on how to use it, which pretty much covers turning it on and the basic testing. But what I've discovered in my time in Jim's is, if you can't explain to a customer why their $10,000 machine isn't allowed to be used, you get yourself in a lot of trouble. You don't get asked to come back. So the Jim's training was so much better because we spent days on working with the tester. We spent several days on testing different appliances that they had set up in the training room up the back. We had an accountant come in and tell us about how to set up our business. We had a guy from the construction industry come in and run us through our white card training or construction card training. And we did a lot of business type goal setting, role plays, all that sort of thing. And the training with Jim's took about 10 days. Now, compared to the sort of thing you get anywhere else, I don't think anything matches it.
And what do you know, but what else is there as in terms of other courses around? Because there's a few test and tag courses I think you can do in like a day or something, and you can. So what's the difference with Jim's?
I think the difference is the detail it goes into. Initially, when I did the training, we had a guy come out from Energy Safe Victoria, who he was out here for 2 full days, and he brought out equipment that he'd set up as faulty. He'd actually manufactured faults into it so that we could get into the diagnostics and say, oh, that's what's wrong with that one. The companies that just, again, run the course for 1 day, it tells you how to do the testing. It doesn't tell you how to run your own business. It doesn't tell you how to set up the accounting component. In fact, the guy who came out, the accountant that came out, and spoke to us. He's my accountant still today. I spoke to him after the training, and I was that impressed that not only did he take the time to come out, so good marketing on his part, but he also has about 50 other gyms franchisees on his books, and a fair number of them from Test and Tag. So just the detail about all the other things. The Test and Tag training, yes, you can get that somewhere else. You can pay to go to a course somewhere and learn how to do it. But they don't tell you how to run your business. They don't tell you how to set your agenda when you're setting up appointments with your customers, or how to manage your customers if you've got issues. They never do role plays on what it's like to deal with a difficult customer. And some customers are. And the other thing that was very impressive in the gym's training, in fact, I enjoyed it so much I came back and did it a second time. Because under the gym's model, if you felt maybe you didn't quite get something the first time, once you've paid, you could come back as many times as you like. And the one bit that I found I wasn't confident with was going and talking to customers, cold calling, and saying, hey, I run this business. Can I talk to you about getting your electrical safety done? And I found that after the first few times I tried it, I didn't really get a lot of success. So I came back to do that one day of the training again, because the standalone technical training courses, they don't teach you to deal with customers.
It's not an easy thing to do, the cold calling. I know that it's a big part of, is a part of your training in that division.
It was. It's a hit and miss type thing. You can knock on a lot of doors, but if you know how to talk to people and you listen to what they're saying, like in the early days, I had a couple of people that were interested, but not at that moment. But I didn't pick up on what they were saying. So by coming back and doing the training again, it made me pick up on these are the cues these people are dropping to say, oh, I really want to talk to you, but can you either tell me more or can you come back tomorrow? And I reckon as a result, I got to let at least 5 customers get away because I didn't pick up on the fact they just wanted a follow-up. They probably weren't the decision maker. They may have had to talk to their manager and they wanted to do that first. But I think in the end, I let a few get away.
Do you remember, because you were so long in employment to now all of a sudden running your own business with that transition in the middle where you were the handyman at home.
Yeah.
But how was that like from a mentality point of view? Like, was it a conflict? Like, how was it? Because it's not an easy thing to do.
In my 30 years in Telstra, I spent a lot of time in middle management. So I'd managed a lot of people, but then that teaches you to manage yourself, because if you can't manage yourself, you can't manage others. So I was comfortable with the managing of my own time and all that sort of thing. But setting up little systems within my own office to make sure that I knew when each customer was due, I knew how early to call them, to do all the invoicing, that was all new to me. So I had to learn all that. And the gym's training was a big part of learning that. Talking to my peers was a good part of learning it as well. Because a lot of the gym's training was run by existing franchisees. Yes, there were some guests that came in, but the bulk of it was run by existing guys within the gym's network.
And going back to your first, let's say, couple of months in business, was there any advice you give to a new business owner now if you're in your own position?
Yes, I would. When you come into a franchise environment like especially Test and Tag, and I'm sure the other divisions are like it, there are 3 ways you can come in. You can purchase a vacant territory, wait for the phone calls to come through the call centre, or go out and knock on doors in that territory and build up from zero. You can buy a vacant territory and then buy excess customers off of existing franchisors or franchisees that may have grown too big and are too busy. Or you can buy an existing business. And what I did was I went with option 3 and I bought an existing business because the guy who was running it, he had about 3 days worth of work. So he wasn't working too hard. So it had scope to grow, but I earned money from the first day. Plus, by buying an existing business, he became a resource to me. In the 6 weeks before he finished, I went out with him nearly every day, got to know some of the customers and some of the nuances about the different types of equipment they use. And then after I took over, he stuck around for another 6 weeks. And even then for another 6 months on the phone if I needed him. So I think the model you pick to go in on decides your comfort level. Now, obviously there's a cost. It cost me a lot more to buy an existing business because, the territory, the training, no matter which way you come in, you're paying for those. You've got to get a vehicle, you've got to get equipment. But I also bought his customers, so that added an extra cost. But it meant that I got paid straight away.
That's a really, really good point. And now with the division, let's talk about how it's evolved. So was it fire safety as well when you started, or was that later on?
I can't remember the exact timing of when I believe they were either dabbling in fire safety or some people were already trained to do it and some weren't. But I definitely wasn't trained from the start. I had to come back at a later date and do a different training course in the same room. And that's where we learn all about the exit lighting and the fire hydrants and hose reels, all that sort of stuff. And we had to get that qualification before we could go into that work. And it's a good fit, the exit lighting and the fire fighting equipment with Test and Tag. It's a good fit because you can package it up with your customers and charge them a more competitive rate. Because, for example, an electrician will come and test your exit lighting, but he'll charge you $100 to turn up and then whatever time he's there. You can get someone from a firefighting company, they'll come and do the fire extinguishers, but they'll charge you a call-out fee as well. And then you can get us to come do your Test and Tag and we charge a call-out fee. But if I'm there for one visit to do 3 things, you just charge the one call-out fee and you can package it up where you can maybe even charge slightly more. But because you're only charging the customer one call-out fee, they're better off financially, you're better off financially, and you tend to hold on to that customer more when you've got them in a package.
Yeah, and they don't need the hassle of ringing 3 different people or dealing with different people all the time for the one thing.
Exactly. And one of the really good things about gyms is, and it's a criticism I see when I deal with customers, and I've won a couple of customers for this reason, is some of the larger fire companies, they don't tell you they're coming. I won't name names, but my customers have said, bloke from company X just turned up and we weren't ready for him to come. We were doing something, that was very important to our business and we didn't want to let him in, and he got all in our face saying, but you have to do it. It's regulation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's true. It is regulation. It needs to be done. But a simple phone call a week before to check if it's okay to come, which is what we do with Test and Tag every single day, makes it a lot more comfortable to get in to see the customer. So they're more relaxed because they know you're coming. They know exactly what you're doing. And they just feel that you're a better fit for them rather than someone who just knocks on your door and says, I'm here to check everything.
And it's sort of strong arms in a way because they say, it's a regulation or, you must do it.
They do. They do. And look, I get asked that question around regulations and what I need to do, and why to do that. And I try and say things like, you must, you have to. But in the end, some of those things are covered by the Victorian Building Code. Some of them are covered by Australian standards. Some of them are compulsory, some of them aren't. There are some things, though, that, if you don't do them and you have some sort of incident, your insurance company will say, well, I'm sorry, I don't want to know you. So I try to work with the customer to get them to come to the realisation that, look, this is important, I need to get it done.
Let's talk about the services on offer from Test and Tag. So it's not just Test and Tag, but maybe you want to give a run through to the people wondering what exactly you do, the full gamut of it.
Well, the ones I've mentioned already, obviously Test and Tag, which is the electrical appliance testing. There's the firefighting equipment, which covers everything from fire blankets right up to fire hydrants. Now, each of those need a different level of qualification. Not all of us do all of them, but most of us have a link into a specialist that will. But most of the Test and Tag blokes have got the ability to do all fire blankets, all fire extinguishers and hose reels. We do RCD testing. Safety switch, another word for them is safety switches, so we do that sort of testing as well. We do microwave leakage testing. Not a huge demand for that. The only place you tend to see that is in commercial kitchens, but I know several of the blokes do it for companies like Red Rooster. Some do it for McDonald's franchises. And I did have a customer recently we visited who, for no reason, came in and said, I need you to test me microwave leakage because I see it's on the back of your card. So they're probably the main ones. We do audit first aid kits as well. I find it easier with first aid kits to replace them than audit them, especially ones for vehicles, because they're very cheap to buy. And when you sit them down and try and open them up and count everything that's in them and then make sure you've got the stuff to replace them, it's quicker to just replace them. Yeah, but they're the main ones.
And with your business itself, can you give you an idea of what type of customers you guys can do?
There's no limit. If anybody's got an appliance that plugs into something that's electrical, if they've got a fire extinguisher in their truck or in their building, if they've got a microwave in their kitchen, if they've got a first aid kit in their office, and all workplaces, whether it be a car or an office or a factory, they've all got to have those sorts of things. They've got to have electrical safety done, got to have RCDs checked. They've got to have their first aid kits up to date, and their fire service stuff's got to be up to date as well. So it's pretty much any environment. Like I've got tomorrow, I'm going to a factory that makes safety barriers for in warehouses. I'm seeing a lady who has to go to a trade show and needs her laptop checked before she goes because she won't be allowed on site without it being done. That's a demand of the site she's going to, but she works from home. I'm seeing a guy who cuts down trees to get power lines safer. He's got 2 fire extinguishers he needs checked. So it varies. And I've got a tradie at the end of the day who does pool fencing. So there's no limit to the places we go.
And what's your biggest client? The most tags.
Gyms.
This one here, I asked that question for a reason. So if people know, you are Jim's personal test and tag franchisee.
Yeah,
so
if anyone comes, I always get nervous around test and tag conference time because someone's going to find something in one of the rooms that I missed. I'm sorry, they move them around a lot.
But imagine you give people a bit of a size of the property. How long does it take you to do? And I know you bring Andy as well in, who's another franchise owner sometimes to help.
Yeah, look, through the national office, the finance office, your team, there's close to 700 tags there. Now, in a good day, where people are easy to move around, because one of the things in office is you've got to wait for people to get off their computer. You just sort of give them a few minutes notice, but if they're busy, you've got to be polite and wait. So I can bang out 200 tags in a day. So if I come up here to do just the national office myself, it's 3, maybe 4 full days work. Then you've got the call centre on top of that, which is probably another 2 days' work. And I do all of the conference centre as well. So the conference centre has got 96 rooms, and on average there's probably 8 to 10 things in each room. So they need to be done every second year, though, because of the nature of that environment, like a boarding room type property. But the office is done 12 monthly, the call centre is done 12 monthly. The conference centre itself, just the office and that's done every 12 months. And then I'm up here twice a year to do all the fire extinguishers and the exit lighting. And I bring in a specialist to test the fire hydrants. So it probably takes up about a full month of my year. So what's that make it, 12, 15%?
Yeah, it's
of my work. So it's a pretty big customer. And you always get nervous when you've got chips in on one big customer, because if you ever lose them, you get the panics up. And unfortunately, I've seen that happen. But no, Jim's has been very loyal to me. Lee referred to me one day as part of the family.
There you go.
Yeah, so there you go. And I remember that.
No, well, Jim's big on test and tag, because he's told the story before, but the one, when he got it done and the person didn't have time or whatever to do one computer or whatever it was, the monitor, that was the one that got faulty and started a fire here. So he's very big proponent and supporter of the division. So
yeah.
I think, and don't worry, the conference is on Gold Coast this year as well. So
yeah,
don't worry about the tags for this year with people checking them. But let's talk about now now I've heard this before, that some organisations they try and get someone trained to do test and tag with a 1-day course to have it done internally, as opposed to bringing in an external. So maybe you want to talk about the risks and obviously why that's a bad idea.
The reason it's a bad idea is because you don't have to be an A-grade electrician to do test and tag, but you do have to be what they call a competent person. A competent person means you've done an appropriate training course to give you the skills to do the electrical safety testing, and that you are regularly doing that work to maintain your skills. The problem with even large environments where a person might be doing it once every 6 months or maybe once every 3 months, they're not really doing it regularly enough. If there's an incident, people are going to look back and say, well, who did this work for you, and what was their skill set? I heard a story. I used to go to a networking group to try and help build business, and I was talking to one of the people there, and his wife worked at one of the large private hospitals that is probably within 15 k's of here, and her normal job was to push people out to radiography to get x-rays done, that sort of thing. But then once a year they gave her the tester and said, go and test everything in a hospital.
Yeah, not good.
And I had another issue with he was actually a tradie who had done the course at Gippsland TAFE, but he got pulled up by WorkSafe, and they quizzed him on how long ago did you do the course and when was the last time you tested your own gear. He said, I did the course 5 years ago. When did the last time you tested your gear? He said, 5 years ago.
Oh, no.
So he was in trouble with WorkSafe straight away. So you're going to get yourself in trouble if you have an incident, because it's just not the right thing to do.
And I think also with you guys dealing with, like, who do you normally deal with in the company with this sort of stuff? Is Is it the operations manager? Who do you guys normally deal with? OH&S people or?
In this?
No, just in
here?
general, like with your.
Oh,
who's
look,
reaching out to you?
a lot of my customers are reasonably small. And when I say reasonably small, they might be, somewhere between, 10 and 50 employees. But that could be a factory the size of a football field as well. So once they get big enough to have an occupational health and safety representative on site permanently, it's normally that person. Where they don't have that type of person, it could be the actual owner of the business. Like with the tradies, it's always the owner because he's the tradie. When I come up here though, it's IT support for the national office. I go direct to the manager of the call centre for the call centre, and I deal with I've forgotten her name now. Lee's sister.
Oh, Tina.
Tina. I deal with Tina for anything to do with the conference centre, or whoever's working down there at the moment.
Yep. And I was going to say as well, with your standards of testing, do you want to talk about leakage testing for people who might not know what you guys do with that?
Yeah, leakage is that's the fourth test we do. The first three tests are physical inspection, because most of the failures are physical damage. We checked earth on an appliance, and then we check insulation resistance, which is the most basic testing you should be doing at a minimum. But then the extra tests we do to give extra value, and there's a very good reason I'll go into in a minute, but the leakage testing is very basic, so I don't want any electricians, ringing you up and telling me I explained this wrong, but this is how I dumb it down for customers. The current flow that goes in on the active should go straight out on the neutral. It shouldn't go anywhere else. If what we're measuring coming back out doesn't match what went in, the machine will tell us that it's wrong. And if it gets too high, that means that current is leaking somewhere. It could be going to earth. It could be in the case of the appliance or the tool that the person's using. And if it's going to the case of the appliance, it could be going through the person. So that's why we make sure that test is done. The other smart reason to turn things on is that it's very embarrassing to tag something that's faulty and doesn't work. Because that, you make one mistake, then it throws credibility on everything else you've done.
Yeah. And do you want to talk about as well, obviously Jim's Test and Tag, largest in Australia with how many franchisees you got. So maybe you want to talk about the difference between your level of using a Jim's Test and Tag franchisee to some other independents out there. Because there are independents popping up and stuff with Test and Tag. So maybe you want to talk about the difference.
All right, didn't expect that one. Look, I can't speak specifically about some of the other businesses. I see their tags all the time. But when I'm cutting their tags off, to me that indicates that the person I'm now working for had a reason to change. Now, the one thing I'll tell you for sure is that we are never the cheapest because we go to the detail to make sure that everything's right. We find some of the other customers, like there was an ad for a company called Tony's Tags, you might have to cut that bit out, who advertised being able to test your appliance without actually unplugging it. Now that's physically impossible because you can't even do an earth check. You can do a physical check to see if it's damaged, but you can't even check for earth, which is one of the most basic tests we do, without unplugging it. So the standard that a lot of the other companies provide, I don't think comes anywhere near what Jim's provide. The level of training they give their people doesn't come anywhere near the level of training we've got, and the level of support we continue to get through the franchisors and the people in the national office who support Test and Tag, I don't think comes anywhere near for the other companies as what we get.
Yeah, I think if you're a serious business, fair him about safety and health and safety of your staff, using gyms is just, it's a no-brainer compared to others.
Look, we do have the occasional bit of prejudice because you'll go to some construction sites in particular where, the site manager might have, cut his teeth in the 70s and probably worked for the BLF, and they have this old world view that all this work must be done by an electrician.
Yes,
it's simply not true. It's a competent person's job. And I feel with the training we've had and with my background in particular, I can do it just as good as anybody else can do it anyway. And I think our customers are starting to understand that because I've been on some of the most major construction sites in Melbourne. I did a job under the Grieve Parade Bridge when they were widening the Westgate Freeway for the tunnel. There's pictures of me with my little table huddling under the bridge with all the traffic going through underneath. I did a job at Marvel Stadium recently because they're doing extensions to that, and they're major construction sites. Now, we are freely allowed to go onto those sites now, and I do a lot of work on railway level crossing removals. Again, large construction sites. So that that bias they may have had us against us because, oh, you're not an electrician, and that would go to every test and tag company, that seems to be dissipating. And there was a time when, I heard that, oh, gyms, they're a mowing company. What are they doing test and tag for? But I think, as you say before, the size of us now, and the number of people we have in different locations. We have guys in outback Western Australia, Northern Territory, all through Queensland. I think we've got the most in Victoria. That our presence is so wide now that people see us as a very reputable provider of those services. I think in the main we probably still get typecast as Gyms Test and Tag, but you'll see the new livery on the cars now. It's got Test and Tag on one side and Fire Safety on the other. To the point where when I got the new car, I turned up at a job and the customer said, oh, Fire Safety, don't you do Test and Tag anymore? So I had to take him around the other side of the car. But, he understands now, and that prompted him to think, oh, I've got some fire extinguishers you can check. So straight away, I was doing a bit of extra work for him, another hour's work.
It's a great point we said about the electrician things. We get, occasionally we get comments when we post some content about, oh, you've got to be a qualified electrician and what they know. But I want to be clear as well from talking to Andy about this was electricians call you sometimes.
Correct.
And this is the point. Electricians are actually calling you to do this stuff.
I've got 3 or 4 electricians who call me regularly to do work for them. I've gone out and helped them quote for jobs and that they are quoting for. They want all that customer's business, and a component is test and tag. Electricians in the main, and I'm not saying all of them, but in the main, they see test and tag as what the apprentice would be doing in his first year, and that's when they learn to do it as a first-year apprentice. But they're not doing it all the time, so you'd have to question, under that, am I regularly doing that work? A lot of electricians still do. But they prefer not to. They'd rather be up in a roof putting in lighting, rewiring a switchboard. They want to do all the exciting stuff about electrical work. Test and tag to an electrician is down the mundane, boring end. But I don't find it like that. It's provided me a very good living. Like when I worked for Telstra, I was in middle management and had a reasonably good wage. But because of the tax advantages of working for yourself, the lower overheads, the ability to depreciate things, I didn't notice any drop in my income. I was still living the same lifestyle for 8 years that I had when I left Telstra. So sorry I got off the track on you there. But
no, that's good.
It's been great for that reason too.
Well, how's your lifestyle been then for the 8 years? How have you found it all?
Well, I've just turned 60. So I'm looking to retire now. But I'm more than likely going to just wind down. I remember before I mentioned about, we'll have people that come in, they may not have enough work. I've got too much work. So I've been selling a few customers off to some of the newer guys, and that's why today I had some free time. So I'm starting to manage my time. Like the guy I bought the business off, he worked about 3.5 days a week, and the other day and a half he either worked around his house or rode his motorbike. So you can balance your lifestyle. So I'm keeping up my standard of living financially, but still doing the things I want to do with working less. So some of those days might be hard days, but it doesn't matter.
How have you found the stress levels compared to what you were doing previously, or just overall mental well-being?
I don't find this job very stressful at all. If you get a customer who wants to complain about something, it can get a bit stressful, but fortunately 5 stars, haven't had one of them. Got to the point.
No, that's fine.
No, stress. When I first started and I had my own business and I'd bought like a certain amount of customers from the other guy, I lost one of them within the first week, and it was a reasonably big one. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I've just lost 10% of my revenue. And it was simply because they said they were going to hire an electrician on site to do the work. So I'm panicking. What's going on here? 5 weeks later, they run me back and said, that electrician we hired is so busy being an electrician, he can't do our test and tag, so we need you to come back. So that one came back to me. But when I have lost customers, I said, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But what I found over the journey is, you lose one this week, there's always another one lined up to come through the call centre next week. And if you can win that customer, then usually the loss is zero. Sometimes it's a gain. You may have lost one that, I didn't like working for them, it was a dirty place, and you've got a nice clean office to go and work in. But no, I don't find any stress in it at all. I can see how people, when I've tried to sell a few of my customers off to some of the other guys, some of them have loved it. I've taken them down there, we've worked a whole day together, introduced them to all the key stakeholders, and they've taken over pretty much seamlessly. But then there've also been a couple of guys, I'm really worried, what happens if they don't like me and they decide to leave because of it and I've paid you for them? My experience is that doesn't happen. So I encourage people to don't be afraid to step in and buy extra work off people if you need it. But I don't find any stress in this job at all. You know, whereas working with Telstra for as many years as I did and managing large groups of people, I'd be starting at 7 a.m, finishing after 5, and then spending an hour driving each way. You know, my normal day now is I might start on site at 7 with a tradie who I want to get out of the way early, but by 2:30 the car's pointed at home and I'm going home, and I might spend half an hour doing the invoices for that day, and then that's pretty much it. By 4 o'clock, I'm getting ready to decide what's for dinner.
So you've created, probably, well, how much time extra? Maybe 16 hours a week, maybe extra, or something you've created yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and what do you do with that free time?
I do work around my own house, I suppose, but no, what I tend to do is I cobble the hours together, and I go and have a game of golf on a Friday afternoon, or if I know a mate's looking for someone to play with on a Wednesday morning, I might schedule my work so I don't start till 12 o'clock. And we'll go and hit off at 6:30 in the morning, and by 11:30 we're finished, and I'm at my job at 12 o'clock. So it's just might watch a few television shows I'm interested in, but you can do anything really. If you've got any hobbies you want to look into, I like to trace my family tree, so I do that a fair bit. That's very time consuming.
What do you use to do that? What do you use to do? How do you do that? Do you do it manually? Are you doing Ancestry, or what are you doing?
I use Ancestry.com.
Yep, .com, yeah.
But I've also got MyHeritage.com up as well, because what tends to happen is a single source isn't reliable. You got to go multiple sources. I use a site called Archives.com as well, and for close family members or direct family descendants of mine, or that I'm a descendant of, I'll go to birth, deaths, and marriages and pony up some money. It is good to, when you're getting into that, to leverage off hard work other people have done, but then you share your hard work as well. It's not a one-way street, but sometimes you find things that don't add up, and you've got to go and buy the documents to actually look at and see who's telling lies.
There we go. And I was going to say as well, so someone might be listening to this, and obviously the economy is a bit doom and gloom at the moment with, house prices, recession and stuff. If someone was made redundant or whatever, what would your advice to be to them if they were looking at something like a Jim's franchise or doing their own business?
I would recommend to anybody who has the confidence, or even is even a little bit nervous about it, to at least consider it, to come up and talk to people who can explain to them how it works. Because, like I said, I'd never run a business on my own. I'd pretty much come out of high school, did my apprenticeship, went to Telstra. So I'd either been 2 companies in 34 years. So the running of a business, while it was something I felt I was always capable of, it was never tested for me. And people will be surprised how easy they take to it. Especially if they manage their time well and they set their objectives. And the basic business training we were talking about before with Jim's, it gives you the tools to do that. To set up how you want your business to run, to get your accounting right, and use the people who are skilled. Like, I don't do my own accounting. I pay someone to do that because it's complex. So I don't want that to be wrong, because I don't want the ATO knocking on my door and saying, we'll have that nice little car you got out the front because you haven't paid your taxes. So I get them to do that because they save you money. I don't think I've had a year where my account hasn't saved me money based on what I pay them. And to the point where I've got him doing my wife's taxes and 3 of my children's, all rolled into the one business package. So I'm saving them money as well.
But also, you started at, was it 52? You bought the franchise, or 51?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I started in 2014. I would have been 52, just turned 52.
Yeah, which is could be a daunting thing for people, but it does just show it's never too late to start or to do something new.
No, it's not. It's an unrelated story, but a best friend of mine in her 50s decided to go and do a nursing course. And she just qualified, I think, this week or last week after all the training and the graduate year. And she'll turn 59 this year. I won't say no, she won't. People know how old she is, but so so this is the same thing. It's a new opportunity that you can start at any time. There are people who have come into this business older than I am today and are still happy to keep working in it. Yes, I said I'd like to retire, have the luxury of good financial backing from my time in Telstra, but some other people don't. So they need to keep working. Pension age in this country is 67. So if you can't support yourself, you don't get a pension till you get 67. Well, if you've got made redundant today and you've still got 10 years to go, this is a good, comfortable way to get yourself to 67.
That's very good advice, Alan, and thank you for providing us with a lot of good info. And hopefully people, if you are thinking about it, jims.net or 131546, and come out for a trial day. I think that's always a good thing to do. And I know Jim's very happy. And did Jim give you a 5-star review before we let you go? Has he given you a review on the system?
What I might have to do, so it wouldn't be Jim personally. I'd have to get Tina or
to do it.
or someone else I deal with, the IT blokes, to do it. But mate, because I know the call centre will actually call people direct if I mention a customer's name. You don't give them the bad ones. No bad ones. 5.
That's right.
Yeah. So I want my sticker, Jim. I want the 5-star franchisee sticker for my car.
I think we've got some of them. We might have some in the office we can give you, but yeah, we'll do that. But thank you very much for your time, and we really appreciate you coming out on your
problem, mate.
time. Appreciate it.
No problem.